these people that are pursuing this that might not even know someone that's trans or have not investigated the success of the medical therapies that are involved here. Do you think that they even care? What are your thoughts about what their motivation is to do this?
I feel that they do not care. I feel that the politicians that are getting involved with this may care if their kid was transgender, but they are just looking at it as a way to gain votes. And I really have a problem with that, because you need to sit down with these kids and sit down with the doctors and have them explain what's been going on. I don't think any of them are doing that. They just hear, oh, these kids are on hormone blockers. Well, guess what? Kids have been on hormone blockers for years for precocious puberty. And it's something that's endorsed by several organizations across the world. This is the medical care that these kids deserve. And the people that are blocking it know nothing about it. They're listening to a few doctors that say, quackish type of things, as opposed to the mainstream, the majority of the doctors, more than the majority, that are saying, this is the way these kids need to be treated, or else we're going to lose them. We are going to lose them. It's
interesting. At Cornelius tonight, we reported a Kentucky state representative whose child was trans and committed suicide. And he was not a supporter of the LGBTQ community. And it took the suicide for him to realize, wait, there's a lot more going on here than what we're selling over the issue of trans. 2018 happens, and Jazz has the surgery, but 2018 was also a big year here in Florida. I know you're not personally really big in the political realm. That's Jazz's lane, I understand. But a governor comes to power in Florida, Ron DeSantis. And I'm curious, when he comes to power, it seemed like everything changed in Florida. LGBT had made so much progress here in the state, and that began to erode. Last year, we watched Don't Say Gay, and what was happening to children, and book bans, as you mentioned, hormone therapy, issues over trans, and all of it was framed under parental rights. Parents have ultimately the right to decide. What do you think about what we've watched since 2018? Jazz went through this transition. She becomes an adult, a legal adult, and the arguments that that parental rights are tantamount, and that can justify issues like book bans and issues in the trans community and Don't Say Gay in our schools. As a parent, what do you think about this argument of parental rights?
I mean, parents do have rights, but there's also other people that put their noses where they don't belong. If a parent has an agreement with a doctor and the doctor said, this is the way to go, this is the parent's right to say, okay, let's do this with my child. You shouldn't be poking your nose in the business between a doctor, a child, and the parent. So with that, I just have a serious issue. And then things like the books. If you don't want your child to read a book, you can send a letter home to the teachers and say, you know what, I don't like this book. I don't want it to be introduced in my child's classroom. But when you have Don't Say Gay, you have people who, are married to one another, same-sex marriages, and their teacher, what right does the government have to come in and say you have to hide the fact that you love somebody of the same sex? I mean, it just, there's layers and layers and layers of this. And some of it has nothing to do with parental rights and some of it does. But yeah, parents have rights with certain things, but you send your child off to school to learn. And you know what? They need to learn about the real world. There are gay people, there are transgender people. And to sweep it under the rug is not helping anybody, because it's just creating more bigots in this world.
We're getting ready to go into the legislative session in Tallahassee in 2023. And it's 7 weeks of hold your seat, because of what we're getting ready to watch. One of the laws that is going to be extensively discussed in a supermajority by the GOP is a law that says that is proposing to remove trans kids from affirming parents, and that if a parent helps support medical need, presumably hormone therapy, other kinds of medical implementation for their children, that the state would be able to take action against the parent to even remove the child from their home. What do you think about that?
That must be the most frightening thing for any parent. I know that when Jazz was little, we feared that as well. When she went off to school, I called the school board and I explained the situation, and they didn't even know what transgender was back then. But I was frightened that somebody would come in and think that we were child abusers and take my kid away. That's, parents probably, biggest fear is that somebody is going to knock on their door one day and do an investigation and remove their child from the home. And I know people that are fleeing from the state of Florida, going to places that are more accepting, because, being afraid of your child committing suicide is horrible enough. And then, having them taken away from you, and what's that child going to think now? They're going to be even more suicidal. Who has the right to say how your child's medical care needs to be handled if the doctors are on board? Take a child away because the parents are listening to what the doctors say and what, the community, the pediatric community, endocrinology community has said. There's been studies. So I feel for them. I really feel that if this happens, a lot of people are going to leave because they want to protect their children.
Jazz is 12. She writes this book in 2014. I Am Jazz. And the state comes in and suggests we're going to remove Jazz from Jeanette Jennings. Mm-hmm. So what would you have done when she was 12 years old? Mm-hmm. What would you have done?
If they were trying to take my child away, besides having a lawsuit, we would have left. There's no way I would ever let anybody take my kid. If I had any inkling that this was going to happen, we would be out of this state. There's no way anybody was ever going to take Jazz from us.
So, Jeanette, I hear two responses there. One is I'd fight. Mm-hmm. That's what the lawsuit does. And then second, there's no way they're taking Jazz Jennings away from me. Mm-hmm. To parents that are listening to you right now that are facing, Jazz is an adult now, so you don't face this issue now anymore. But to parents that are listening to you that don't have the resources to fight and don't have the ability, which is resources, to leave, any particular recommendations in terms of what you watched? You express you had fear of someone coming in and taking Jazz Jennings away from you. Any other recommendations that
it's very hard to pick up and leave, but what if you were to take your child and send them to a relative in another state if you couldn't afford to leave on your own? No one has the right to take your child, and you have to go to the ends of the earth to protect them. Do what you have to do. I can't imagine a parent having to live without their child because they're transgender. And I've seen these cases in other states, and I've talked to other parents where their child was taken away from them. And like a little girl like Jazz, they made the child switch the pronoun and cut her hair and become a boy again. And the child was suicidal. I know another one that lost their lives. This is a life and death situation. So you have to do what you have to do to protect your child if you want your child to live. And I know some people don't have the means, like you said, to get up and move their lives. But what if you move the child to a place where they're safer? Yeah. There's got to be somebody out there that could take the child in. I would take a child in. I would bring a child into my home if I lived in a state that was safe.
Yeah.